Shirley here with Sirius Stellus Moon. And we have 29-degree ascendant and mean heaven ruled by Mercury, and Mercury in the 12th house, which is a great time to talk about um, a colony or a project that's supposed to be stealth wealth, not being profitable. Or this is a great time to talk about colonialism, because colonialism is something that you do in a faraway land, which is the 12th house. And the moon is approaching Aldebaran. So I've been watching interview by Bisan Ude from Gaza, and she talks about a lot of interesting things. Now, if you are a targeted individual, um, she's not mentioning the witchcraft and the targeting, and I think that the people in Gaza still cannot talk about that because they're reliant on trying to get to be heard by the West. That is the exploitative in the targeted individual. She does talk about the world order. She doesn't concentrate on Israel, but sees Gaza as a study case, which I really, really love and appreciate. But what she doesn't mention here is the targeted individuals, the MK Ultra projects, the CIA tunnels underground, which is why they don't have bunkers when there are missiles dropping. And you won't find that, but please understand that it's very likely existing. It's existing in Gaza, in as much as it's existing in the USA. In addition to all that she talks about, um, so I will stop when she talked as well about the fact that colonialism stopped existing when it stopped being profitable, and now I have. Um, the first thing that came to my mind towards 2030 is if you are in some way invested in 15-minute cities, don't. Why? And I'm a person that grew up in the city. Okay, I grew up in cities. Um, there was a time where I grew up in a place that was supposed to be kind of like a village in a city, and the attempt to have kind of like a house with a land, and the walls were like a tent, so you could hear the neighbor mixing their tea with a spoon, um, and no privacy. And even when I moved to the rural place, it was the Arad, which is the largest territorial. It's the largest territory in Israel, so it's basically bigger than Tel Aviv territorially, but it's not built yet. And having fourth house Gemini, which is cities, with the ruler in Aries, which is new cities, is something that's very relevant for me, particularly if you are Virgo ascendant or Sagittarius ascendant, Virgo ascendant or Scorpio ascendant. You might be invested, your 8th house might be invested, and Cancer ascendant, because that's your 12th house, then you might be invested in 15-minute cities. Why am I saying don't? So let me talk to you about a conversation that I had when I was, it's not volunteering, I was basically doing community work for housing when I was in academia. And uh, at the time we had a person from the Masons, and he was talking about making the place profitable, removing all the old tenants, and making this a city of businesses profitable. I had also a friend that was litigating in academia until he got to the cult. Then she had to cloak herself like like the invisible cloak, okay? Because her family was, high society, so they were part of this masonry thingy. Um, but one of the people that were helping her is a person that worked at both the private and public sector and wants to make Tel Aviv a profitable 15-minute city. And I was asking him, what about claustrophobic and agoraphobic people? Because all the traumas create that, okay? And a nervous system supportive housing needs to have access to soil so people can step barefoot on the soil, and so on and so forth. So it doesn't, okay, the plans are not livable for people that are dealing with trauma, which is going to be everyone, okay? Which means that they are not meant for people to live in per se. Um, because what they meant is to enslave people and be profitable, but it is exactly the fact that people enslave people that makes it not profitable. So I lived in cities my entire life. The working sector has been such that it was not allowed to work. Either you had to stand too much on your feet, which would not be possible. You would get sick, or you would have to tell lies to people, which would cause throat issues. Okay, you couldn't speak, and you would get allergies. Um, and run to the bathroom, okay? Like there was no working sector, and if you worked in a job that's actually doing a job that's actually even providing value for people, then the boss would be intelligent, and they would be addicted to things, and then there would be missing profits going missing because they would use it on gambling and on sex trafficked girls and boys, and they couldn't talk about that, so they couldn't give you a raise, and or you worked for a high tech company, Israel, high tech nation, and the password for the most expensive program was such that it's so easy to crack, and at the same time they weren't fixing the bugs, and they were just playing pretend while the drivers were paying with their money for the bugs in the system, because their company was making them think that there are no bugs in the system. And and so you see that creates a situation where people get sick, then they go to treatment, and the treatment is not treating them. Okay, it's causing side effects so horrible that they cannot work, and then to have a housing, they are required to do like volunteering, like the project that I did. Um, if they want to study or want to do something with themselves in academia, they would run into those secret societies problems, and they run into the research problem. I remember when we were joking about the clarity of the air, okay, which we literally made a satire that says it's dirty here, and talking about the research environment, because it was not allowed to have a research out that talks about the air being polluted. So what I'm saying by far and large is that if you're invested in that dumb fuckery, you're setting yourself up for a bubble that is going to, and that's what people don't talk about. It's not going to make itself apparent right away. It's going to make itself apparent when you need to cash in on that, and you need to go to your elderly housing, and you need to retire, and you need to cash in for the tuition for your children, and you need to cash in for your medical treatment that is not even medicine anymore. And after 10, 20 years 30, 40, 50 years that you've listened to the advice of don't listen to the weather of the market, they're not listening to your moods, and then you need to cash in on your investment, and it drops on you like the missile that dropped on the people that did financial advising and said they are at peace with investing in the weapon industry, until there was a war with Iran. Their mother died, they're holding their baby, a missile drops a couple of buildings from them, and all they think is, I can't write about financial freedom anymore. I don't even find that useful. And my God, going, if you die by a missile, it's not such a terrible way to go. And and very likely because they've been targeted individuals and were psychically tortured by the MK Ultras. You come to that conclusion in some way, you understand. And so, for those of you that are going to be invested in these 15-minute cities, whether by a 401k, by a passive investment, or by your actually opening an investment account or opening a life insurance account that is also invested in those things, yes, just add. Thank you. Then what you're going to see is that those places are not going to be profitable. They are meant to depopulate. They're not meant to be profitable. But what they sell to the lower rank Masons is that it's going to be profitable 15-minute cities. And they're going to be invested in these profits and getting passive income from basically people making the city profitable, which basically means enslaving the people. Okay, so And they market it with a lot of reasoning. We need to look at the city as a business. The city needs to be profitable so that we can sustain it. But it's the infrastructure and so on and so forth. Um, but this is going a step forward from taking property taxes to build infrastructure into enslaving the city and cutting dividends, which is exactly how the French Revolution came about, okay? Back then, it was just people with plots of land. Now it's going to be the people in the 15-minute cities, and the fact that technology is way more reasonable than we think, okay? Because technology is going to very easily see that it's not economic to keep these people inside the houses. That's what it did to billionaires. It kicked them out of the houses when they did smart homes. So the 15-minute cities is supposed to be smart homes, which means that people are going to be locked out of their own property. There would be no point to work. Already now people feel there is no point to work because they can never have living a life while making a life while making a living. And if people don't have that, they stop. Their body stop working. So when you're invested in that, it's going to show up as don't listen to the markets, don't listen to the markets, don't listen to the markets. Where you're invested, it's a long-term haul. By the end of the couple of decades, you see that you want to cash in on that. If you stay alive and you want to cash in on that, and what money? Okay, like Switzerland to the Jews and to the Nazis. What money? And so the 15-minute cities are to begin with not profitable. If you take a look at the cities that were in the Soviet Union that were abandoned, the Chinese cities, the ghost cities, they have Chinese huge ghost cities abandoned. Why? Because they were mega projects that were basically trying to profit off of humans without representing the actual sovereignty that is required to have connection and community, both on the Soviet level and on a capitalist level. So even the idea to build, let's say, a colony on another planet, okay, taking it as a study case, because there are many people thinking about that. If you plan to make it a slave colony, then it's not going to be profitable, and it's not going to be profitable just when you want to cash in on the profit. This is why United States has such a gross national debt, because it's been doing that since 1776. And now the moon is on the Uranus of United States, okay, conjoining Aldebaran. So Mercury hour, of course. So looking at, even if we take a look at Gaza, why does Donald Trump treat Gaza as the worst real estate deal possible? First of all, there are people invested in Gaza, in the natural resources in Gaza, in the building. I worked at the Israeli-Palestinian Chamber of Commerce for a short apprenticeship. It was before the Me Too and the environment. There were even women making these weird jokes, and it was like people expected people to mingle up with kind of a sugary setting that by the way never yields. It's not about, it's if it's not genuinely love, it's also not genuinely profitable business. Okay, because that's just the way it works. I mean, it's the wealth is manifested with our well-being. Okay, just to put it that way. And the people that were with me in the room, there were economists with me in the room. There was the person that was the founder of Osem, which is one of the major food companies in Israel. And you understand people were sitting at that table talking about investment in Palestine because they had the financial interest. We were trading with Palestine um, way before, and then you ask yourself politically, what entity are we trading with? Because the entity Palestine exists as a trading entity. We are trading with Palestine. There is an Israeli-Palestinian Chamber of Commerce next to the Carmel in Tel Aviv, next to Jaffa, next to Leonardo Hotel, and and the fact that people were invested in that, but it's just when they want to cash in on their investment. And this is why Donald Trump, from a business, from a real estate, Masonic business point of view, tells you it's the worst real estate deal ever. Why? Because they invested in a slave colony. And they put Israel and the Mossad as a proxy to hold that slave colony. Now everybody's against Israel because everybody loves to put that on Israel. Well, the CIA is not the Mossad. Maybe they're working together. MK Ultra, okay? It's not only the Mossad. Maybe they're working together. And by the way, the head of the Chamber of Commerce was the ex-head of either Mossad or Shabak, ISIS or Mossad. I don't remember which. And there was just a movie, an interview with him. So he came to us. The way I met him, I was in One Voice Israel, and there was One Voice Palestine. They were switching up to V15, which means I was going away. I wanted to do a peace party, and they made it a goodbye Bibi party. I'm like, I'm not contributing to that. Rabin was assassinated that way. No, thank you. And that guy came in to look for people to do apprenticeship. So I just say that sounds very cool. Let's see what's in there. And I went there. I didn't cash in on anything, including my travel thing, because of the environment. Okay, it's an intergenerational thing. People did not know about sexual sovereignty, especially in these areas, and so it came such a way that I was becoming sick. So I had to leave, and I didn't cash in on any of the things. They were actually looking for me to give me the money, but I was just not even able to communicate. That being said, so that guy was looking for us in One Voice Israel and Palestine, and he told us, well, that's money in, that's the trade. And he said, we try to get the peace through the trade. Also, Itzhak Tshuva was thinking about making peace through the trade. I think also Shimon Peres. But then what you have to understand is that if you're invested in a slave colony, it's not going to be profitable. It's not going to be profitable just when you want to cash in. And this is why even people from the Israeli intelligence and business people wanted more sovereignty for Palestinians so that their business would be yielding and profitable. So now when you're talking 15-minute cities, I want everybody to look at this interview with Bizan from Gaza and similar interviews, because this is a study case on a business level to why Donald Trump says this was the worst real estate deal ever. So anybody invested in the 15-minute cities, and Trump knows that, is going for the worst real estate deal ever. Okay? Can't cash in on trafficked, harvested organs, trafficked people, trafficked children, ritually abused children. Not yielding. It is meant to keep people fighting with themselves, thinking about the money, chasing the money, then they change the currency, and there's no money, and keep betraying each other in that unsustainable type of economy. If anybody's invested in that, there it's like you're putting money to the air. And so people don't like it when I say that. I talked about the psychiatry.com bubble. Okay, I talked about the SSRI's bubble and the other things that they do there. Okay, bubble, and the bubble popped, and the bubble popped. Okay? Pharmaceutical. Teva Pharmaceutical, boom, drop down. Pfizer and Moderna, class lawsuits that make them drop down. Olanzapine, I hope for you that you have not even money to the dollar invested in olanzapine. I pray for you and for your family. You do not want to meet any of these substances as a patient. And I wrote about medicine, so I have. Okay? It's an assassination drug. And then they try to get the patient in debt so that they can persecute the patient. That's what it is. And that happened in Israel, the place where everybody say it's the medicine, it's the medicine, it's the medicine. They get the best medicine. We got a Pfizer lab. So I talked about the medicine.com bubble popping up in Soroka Hospital, the largest hospital in the Negev. Best technology, great doctors. They bring doctors from the US. It's not about the medical stuff. But because of MK Ultra, families upon families, their loved ones enter alive, come out dead. People make a big mess. Now what are they going to do? They're going to put security against the people. Unless the doctor, now in COVID they took the doctors away. So unless the doctors unite with the patients and work against MK Ultra, but then they have to get over the big fat ego because they've been trained for 7, 8, 9 years in a Masonic rite of academia to not even understand advanced models that are, the more advanced the medical research models, even statistic models, machine learning models go into, the more we go into traditional Chinese medicine, iridology, holistic methods for diagnosing a patient, but we deprive those doctors from their dividends that they are entitled to whenever an AI diagnosis measures comes into play. There's a machine now that looks at the iris, that makes photos of your iris. Now, of course, these photos are used for BCI, for surveillance. And iridology gets none because it's on the account of iridologists that they make this money, because this is both for art. In Azrieli Mall in Israel, there is a company that makes a picture and rings from your eyeballs picture. Okay, it's a very beautiful piece of art, but we also know that they keep those pictures. Your eyes tell about your entire medical situation, heritage situation. Why do they have, when they have yes, when they do the multiple personalities, okay, or the BCI, they make it so that it's more challenging to track which consciousness is operating at a single time. There's a lot of more reasoning to that. But the thing is that bubble popped, and a lot of people were very stressed because their human trafficking, money laundering was reliant on that bubble. And they tried to convince me, okay, they didn't know, because I'm Israeli, so they're like, you're Jewish, right? And I'm like, okay, yes, let me hear what you have to say. Yeah, we know that if a woman cheats, then there will be murder. You're talking to a woman. Am I supposed to think like that about the Jews? And that guy was developing an investment platform that he was supposed to sell to the banks. So, and that also means that if your country is a high-tech country, it's a bubble that pops. For Israel in particular, because Mercury is next to Aldebaran, ruling over the 12th house. Whatever Israel does wrong with the 12th house, the minute people come to cash in, and it's every 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, Did they come to cash in? And then, where is the high-tech company? Where are all these things? The missile dropping on your neighbor's house when they were in the safety house and the entire family got killed? Yeah, that's your investment. When I was in high school, IBM, which was a branch of JP Morgan, coming for us young innovators. I had people that had patents 10 times better than me, that wanted to make people that had disability to be able to walk again, to be able to communicate, to be able to reach for help. And I see that since I'm 41 years old, since I was 17, I still see these startups trying to raise funds, doing crowdfunding. The technology is there. Why? Because they have to sell it to surveillance, and they don't want to. That's why they're fundraising since I was 17, and they were my colleagues in high school, and I see everyone, they pop every now and then on my feed. But what they wanted for us is, you see the toothpasta, but people brush their teeth. If you increase the hole of the toothpasta, they use double the material, and then we make double the profit. And they don't pay attention to that. That's what JP Morgan wanted. That's why we had the Bitcoin.com popping, and people committing suicide because they grew up, they appeased JP Morgan. There were people my age. It's the difference. Both of us targeted individuals. Whether you make the money, you don't make the money, you appease them, you don't appease them, you targeted individual. Navo.com, targeted individuals. And they get them when they manufacture the crisis, then they get them to Navo. So now it's coming to the 15-minute cities, and where it's going to, how they convince the people, well, they're sick, they need a hospital. Well, why not live in a place where it's... And no, it's not going to be profitable. What's profitable? Growing a food forest, that's profitable. What's profitable? Have your miners knowing when and how much to harvest, not to harm the earth, and having a good working conditions, so the people that come in touch with the minerals contribute to the ideas and cash in on the dividends. Then we get the technology that actually serving humanity. Those bubbles pop. The Bloomberg boys you see out there since infanthood, whether they were cloned or not, they were tortured. And then you get to the situation of people like Donald Trump saying, hey, that's the worst, that's the leaking information to us that is so vital. Gaza was the worst real estate deal ever. Now I want you to think about Gaza. What comprised Gaza? I want you to think about 15-minute cities. I want you to think about similar projects, okay? 2008, I was getting the Section 8, Section 8, Section 8, over nothing. Section 8, they give them 9 months, like a person is a pregnant woman when they're coming out of homelessness. Veterans, targeted individuals, scientists that were silenced in the street. Then they take the tenants, okay? They bring someone in, ruin the house. Now the person said, oh, the tenant, they take a company. Take a company to check the tenants. Don't check the tenants, check your government. Check the MK Ultra, check the targeted individual. You're gonna be one. People had 12 estates. Then came the house flippers, no estates. Now when it happens, when they're in their 70s, I have an astrologer colleague, one of the best astrologers in Israel, had to start doing astrology courses again. Because all the estates got run out of the flippers. Then he has 2 children to raise. That's supposed to be the passive income. 70 years old man. What is he supposed to do? What is he supposed to do? Go mining? Now, what happens when it's your passive, when it's your investments? The market drops, and it's your retirement. Those who are invested in slavery don't get to retire. But also those that are in those secret societies, in those intelligent societies, they don't get to retire. And it affects the entire community. And what Lady Bizan doesn't mention is the rituals that are done on the people, the use of technology to surveil the people, to make it look like they are crazy, to get them to commit suicide, and this is so prevalent in the United States. I think United States are no working people, they're only people that are doing 2 jobs. And there are more targeted individuals than Americans in the United States. And no, it's not just indigenous people. JFK was assassinated because the humanity enslavement project that he was supposed, the operation that he was supposed to be a part of failed, tanked. And not only that, he closed the Cold War. So they did him out. He was one of the 7. He was a deep state. So just so that you know that people from the deep state understand exactly what I talk about. That's why they send the people that are like, but if a woman cheats, we murder her. You're talking about a woman. And explaining to me how those rings, those pedo rings work. They say, you see, there's like the 0, okay? 2 people holding that chain, 3 people holding that chain. If one of them lets go, the other 2 are not hurt. So they work in trees. It's their word. I don't know nothing about that. Why they explained that to me, I don't know. What's that to do with the medicine bubble of investments? I don't know. We try to make people look like they're crazy. I don't know. Was that Epstein doing it? I don't know. But when you say, for example, you see a dealer, when you see an Epstein, you don't see an Epstein. You see perhaps between 10 to 20 people that are taking over the consciousness of that Epstein at every single moment, doing every single thing, and then the person might even be dissociated with what they're doing. That's why you don't have the Epstein list. Who funds for the secret societies? Right now, Rothschild and Rockefeller. Very likely there are other hidden, okay, usually the Dow that you can name is not the Dow. And they're trying to campaign, no, we don't have human sacrifice in Illuminati and so on and so forth. Money to the dollar, but the money, when it's the money time, when it's the money line, people want to see freedom. You can't talk about that. You say if most people are targeted individuals because of that project, then your campaigns is not, and you're not cashing in on anything. And this is how the Rothschild lost their mansions in Europe, lost people to the concentration camp, and they don't get to pick and choose who. It's AI. So that's something that's been on. And that's another perspective of how we can both look at Gaza and look at real estate, look at investment, understand what the people that were born into these secret societies are telling us, because that's valuable information. And I said what I said. I mean, Uranus is also on the NAVO 10th house, and that means, and NAVO EU, think about NAVO in US, but NAVO and EU is almost one and the same. And when there is a war within NAVO, when there is a civil war within NAVO, and there is one, it's civil war o'clock, okay? And it's on MK Ultra. Because that's That's how the funding is expected to come in. The secret societies are funded to do MK Ultra. The lower degrees, the lower Masonic degrees, they don't get to see that because they reasoned with people. I heard people tell me, Masonic, they make us watch movies that are with torture and so on and so forth, so that we will become good soldiers and we're not excited when we see that, so that we are still able to maintain sanity. Okay? But they expose them to the excess. And these are people in the Masons that told me about that. They didn't tell me I'm in the Masons, but everybody knows the practices. And they're supposed to be brought to a situation that nothing touches them anymore. But when they go higher up the ranks, they have to perform these things. On a local level, we had a scientist, great mathematician, until he came out of the closet. He had a boyfriend. Okay? One day, he had filmed a movie, raping a child with his boyfriend. Of course, he got caught. Boom! Neutralized. That would not have been possible had he not gone through ritual abuse as a child. Very likely so. Okay? That's our mathematics. Alice in Wonderland's author, okay, also had something to do with children that was peculiar. And so the lower degrees, they don't get to see what they will have to do. And by the time they have to do that, to branch out, when they understand, first of all, when they are in that, then they meet the people, and then they know how global that is. And they understand what happens when they walk out and they just want the jobby job. I understand, because I was the person trying to do the jobby jobs and never went into the Masonry because they required secrecy. There are lodges for women, but they require secrecy. And I said it's anti-scientific to require secrecy. For me, what I knew about Masons, I was like, oh, all the who's and who's, all the Enlightenment, all the thinkers, they were all Masons, so I thought it was a good thing. So, but then when they require secrecy, I said, no, it's unscientific to do these things in secret. And then what they do, you understand why they require the secrecy, because nobody is supposed to do these things. It's war crimes, even in time of peace. But they're funded by the wealth families. Bless you. So, and Masonry, what is Masonry? It's architecture, is building our real estate, whether it's housing or office or monasteries or government buildings or the building of military alliance or bunkers. So I understand none of those structures is reliable, including the bunkers and the banks. and the financiers are growing from money exchange to banking to erecting a pope. That was the journey of the Medicis. And and the ritual around imprinting the coin or even digital money, there's a ritual about that. And because the ritual is not really benefic, then it's very, very difficult to transmute the energy of money. And this is why people that work on the money mindset, ancestral wounds around money, there's a glass ceiling that they reach that they can't break. It's like, yeah, because of those rituals, because now you need to change the rituals around the money to actually be benefic, because you've done all the things that are no longer compatible with that way of making currency. It's not that currency, it's that way of creating money. And then the people that try to tend to that are still entrenched in those skulls and bones societies, which is malefically affecting bone marrow. Um, and yeah, that's important to know. Um, and this is something that if you lend an ear and you connect the dots, then you see how big the problem is, but you also see the people that are in the seven, the people that are in the skulls and bones, the Bloombergs, the Soros boys. They're all realtors, they're all real estate. They're all to do because not because of the housing, but because of the natural resources. Okay, the right to harvest resources, the right to mine from a place. Okay, that's why Trump is so interested in the Arctic. Everybody is. Trump and Putin met in the Arctic. Okay? Without Zelensky. Over Ukraine. Aha. Where's the fly on the wall that calls him daddy? We want update. What was there? What was that meaning? And so um, so so this is what we see. But even when you invest in the Arctic, okay, if you make it a slave colony, just when you want to cash in on that, it's gonna pop. Now, the people that grew up in these societies, they live on the bubbles, popping and renewing bubbles. They create the bubbles. And this is also what this person who justified murder of women in Jewish societies told me. And he said, you see, well, the people, the big wealth, it moves the money so that it moves the markets. So, and this is where the only thing that was beginning to work against that was the union of investors. Remember the Robin Hood? Because they can do the same, but the Robin Hoods can do the same. And this is only when only large groups of people can move the money like small groups of people in secret societies. Planeteer wants to own the earth. This is the you own nothing and be happy. I don't know what's their issue, but the thing is, when it comes to relation, there's social engineering done around relation. It's, by the way, how I got into that. And what happens is, to have a happy, healthy, safe relation, okay, you need certain power distribution that allows for that. And these people are confronted with that. This is how you see the WEF exposed. If somebody wants to take over the world, there's going to be competition. But more than that, there's going to be conflict of interest between their desire to have, whether it's to be single or to be in a happy relationship, there's going to be a conflict of interest around that. Okay? You think about the Mormons, the Mormons behind Musk's baby breeding. Now, the Mormons are associated with the Masons that are funded by the, we know who, the Brazilians. Sorry, Brazil. Everybody cut on the Brazilians. And by the way, it's an Israeli person who talked about it. And and what happens is that they got to breed children. They got to breed. They're like, you want to have a colony on Mars? Good. They want. So I want you to watch episode 9 by Anneke Lucas. She interviews a person that was supposed to be an Epstein. This is something that can take your perspective, and to watch her interview, her last interview on Anneke Lucas' podcast. So people talk about the fact that in those rituals they had to perpetuate crimes. So it's also leading to the fact that jail systems, hospital systems, enclosure systems, the whole concept needs to change, because what they're doing right now is the jail experiment. that unethical jail experiment of masters and slaves. The entire Masonic society and secret society is based on that. Their entire rituals are based on that. So, what do you do in that situation? You direct the energy at the people that comprise the prison. So it's no longer profitable. Same people, people in Gaza, people in 15-minute cities, people in colonized people, okay? It's not about fighting in and amongst yourselves, and the temptation is going to be there. It's about getting that idea and saying, oh, okay, I understand what's going on here, and pointing directing that energy at the people that created that prison. This is when it stops being profitable. Now you're going to be naturally inclined to do that. Don't be afraid. You're going to be naturally inclined to do that because, and this is why they keep trying to recruit people, why they have an army in the United States. Obama says it's going to be an army of civilians. Basically talks about the targeting individuals. And why they need an army of these people doing that is because people so quickly get that it's useless. It's not going to get them anywhere. People tend to cooperate so much more quickly than people think, and they try to build on the myth of betrayal being something that is long-lasting. Even in a world war, okay? The armies, they began to play soccer with one another, then they began to shoot in the air. So they replaced the soldiers. Then it happened again, then it happened again, then it happened again. But the Rothschilds, before we blame the Rothschilds were the people that were not included in trade, not included in anything, not included in the cloning project in the beginning. Perhaps now they have a second thought, I don't know. But they're not included in anything, so they learned about currency. And they moved through the banking to become the Rothschilds. And they affected kingdoms. But it began from being not included in being able to trade and being exposed to being those children trafficked and being those people traded. It stemmed from that. So whenever they traffic children, traffic people, what's going to happen? They're growing another Rothschild. But if we don't want to have an excess or to oscillate between oppressive economy and the economy of the oppressed, then the point of interference, okay, is to abolish slavery altogether. So yeah, that's my thoughts. Moon is approaching Aldebaran, so this is also a tip about how to actually have land in this time, because there are many opportunities, and with Aldebaran, you may get to win the land, but to keep the land, you're actually going to have to be the better providing human rights in your vicinity, because if you are terrible, there's always going to be someone more terrible. There was Genghis Khan, okay? There's always going to be someone more terrible. If I watch a video about removing negative energy, and I got people living in Utah saying, I do that, they interfere with my manifestations, they interfere with my intentions, I have to do that all the time, and so on and so forth, because they're living in Utah. They learned it from indigenous tribes, Falcon. Okay? Jabs on my surname later.